For Split Page 6, we watched White Privilege 101, A Class Divided and How Structural Racism Works by Trisha Rose. A Class Divided was an experiment put together by a teacher in an elementary school classroom who was determined to explain to her students how racism worked. To start off the experiment, the students were asked who was treated unfairly, and they immediately responded blacks and Indians. The teacher wanted to explain to them what the stereotypes were and why people felt this way. As easy as it can be to discuss racism in a classroom, giving the students an example such as the one that their teacher gave them makes it much easier to understand and relate to. The students were divided into two groups, people with brown eyes and people with blue eyes. As soon as the students were split up into those two groups, they immediately acted accordingly. The blue-eyed children took advantage of their position of power, and the brown-eyed children felt sad and powerless. With only 15 minutes having gone by, the children started to become nasty. When the roles were reversed, the brown-eyed children also showed no sympathy for their fellow classmates. The students knew they were being split up by eye color, but they didn't understand why the people with blue eyes were being treated so much nicer. The concept of the experiment was explained to them, but going from being everyone in their classroom was equal to being divided so quickly was very confusing for them. Something to be noted was that the students performed a lot better in their class assignments when they were the ones that were in the position of power. While the children with blue eyes were succeeding, the children with brown eyes weren't doing as well in their quizzes. Once the experiment was over for the day, the students were able to discuss how they felt about it and how being in this position of power or being in the position of the minority made them feel. I think this is a great experiment because it works for students at such a young age and it can work on adults too. There are so many people who choose to remain ignorant to the fact that racism still exists in this country, and I think something like this today would still be helpful. When the experiment was flipped and the brown-eyed students were the ones in power and the blue-eyed students were the ones not in power, things became kind of aggressive very quickly. While the experiment was first done with children, it was actually done with a group of adults as well. And once they were split into brown and blue eyes, within the first 20 minutes, the blue-eyed people were getting ready to revolt. The blue-eyed people had all the energy in the hallway, but once they started getting stereotypes inside the classroom, they got quiet and felt uncomfortable. The quotes from this that stuck out to me the most were, "It's what you do to the image of blue eyes. You three people. You want me to call you by your name, put it on your paper." And something like this is stuff that happens to people of color all of the time. And something like this happens with black people all of the time. The minute one black person commits a crime or does something wrong, the rest of the group of black people is demonized. Another video that we watched was How Structural Racism Works by Trisha Rose. And to start off the video, she said, "We see the effects of racism every day. Through media, news, we see microaggressions daily." And it's crazy to me because everything you see on social media is something that is provided to us with images, but imagine the things that we aren't seeing constantly happening to people of color. Another quote from the film was, "Battling racism is hard for everyone. The subject is very emotionally challenging." And to me, having the opportunity to not discuss racism on its own is already a privilege. Growing up in a black household, that's not a conversation you can avoid because you're constantly going to be judged by the color of your skin. And I think people need to understand this because they always say they don't want to discuss racism, but they don't understand how important the topic is to discuss. Something else that this video discussed that was important was the colorblind ideology. And that makes it seem like that equality is an extra privilege for people of color, when it's something that everyone should have already on their own. There are so many white people today that don't believe white privilege is real, and there's so many sources and so much information available to prove that that's not true. Something from the film that was important was, "Since I don't see color, I can't be racist. And since no special benefits are given to me based on my whiteness, racism isn't causing these inequalities." And this just mentality is very foolish and very ignorant because just because you feel like you haven't had the upper hand, your skin color alone is giving you that privilege. People claiming that they don't see color are a part of the problem because there are so many people getting killed for the color of their skin, and someone saying they don't see color is making it seem like that the crime committed wasn't because of that person's skin tone. The last video that we watched was White Privilege 101, and one of the quotes right from the beginning was, "White privilege can be a disability. When I look at you, I don't see color, and whiteness is normalized." And I could not believe that someone said this because white privilege is definitely not a disability. That right there, and being able to say that on your own, is in fact a privilege. One of the women in the video said that she needs to work hard to remember that she is white, and this is a privilege because I'm reminded every day and constantly throughout that day that I am black, and I have to move carefully. White privilege gives perks, unfair advantages, and elevated status in the worldview. Even in 2020, whiter skin is still seen as more beautiful in a lot of different cultures. Lastly, something in the film that shouldn't surprise me but still did was that a white man and a black man both applied for the same jobs. They had been friends all throughout college, and when they applied for the job, the black man was told that there were no more positions, but right after, his white friend applied and was hired on the spot. This happens constantly today to black people as well. Black people are seen as unprofessional because of our hair, the way we dress, the way we talk, and that's just not true. If people could just get together and agree that everyone deserves to be treated equally, we could definitely battle racism together, and people, such as white people, could use their white privilege to help people of color fight back and get the equality they deserve.